Juju Watkins is currently going viral for saying some things about Caitlyn Clark.
2 minutes ago, the basketball world exploded. Juju Watkins, one of the most electrifying young stars in women's basketball, just said what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dared to say out loud. In a jaw-dropping interview that's already being dissected frame by frame across every platform, she didn't hold back. She called out the system. She pointed fingers at the favoritism. And whether she meant to or not, she put Caitlyn Clark right in the center of a firestorm.
That is Juju Watkins, man. And I had the honor of seeing her play in person. I had the honor of meeting her mother. And I'm telling you right now, she's next up, bro. There's no doubt in my mind that Juju Watkins is going to come into the W standing on all business, breaking all records. That's how I feel about her.
It's about to change everything we thought we knew about women's hoops. Some are calling her brave. Others are calling her bitter. But one thing's for sure. After what just went down, nothing in this sport will ever be the same again. Let's rewind for a second, because you need to understand how we got here. Juju Watkins wasn't supposed to be the villain in anyone's story. Just months ago, she was the name on everyone's lips. The USC phenom who had the charisma, the handles, the killer instinct that made you stop scrolling and actually...
Fortunate news, Juju Watkins possibly will miss the entire 2025 to 26 basketball season. And this unfortunate situation, man, we ultimately know what happened to her last year. She tore her ACL, playing in a matchup to damn near go to the national championship.
Watch. She wasn't just playing college basketball. She was building an empire. Fans were already whispering that she could be the one to rival Caitlyn Clark's throne. The next big thing, the future, the player who would take women's basketball to places it had never been before. But then everything changed. Late in the 2024 season, disaster struck. A devastating ACL tear. The kind of injury that doesn't just sideline you physically, it tests everything you thought you knew about yourself. One moment, Juju was flying. The next, she was watching from the bench, helpless, as the world moved on.
Her from landing big time shoe deals like Nike. That is not stopping her from her agent Clutch Sports, who I still believe Caitlyn Clark should have went to. Rich Paul keeping her name alive. And as of right now, to me, Juju Watkins is still going to be the biggest star in college basketball without actually picking up a bat.
Her. And here's the thing about being injured in sports. The spotlight doesn't pause. It just finds someone else. While Juju was grinding through rehab, fighting to get back to herself, the media machine kept spinning, and it was spinning around one name, Caitlyn Clark. Every headline, every highlight reel, every breathless discussion about the future of the sport, it all circled back to her. Now, don't get it twisted, Caitlyn earned her flowers. Record-breaking college career, electrifying rookie season in the WNBA. She brought sold-out arenas, primetime games.
Probably Caitlyn, Vandals, Chelsea, Strange, Brittany Griner, Range, Caitlyn.
And a level of mainstream attention women's basketball had been begging for. She became the face, the golden child, the one everyone wanted to talk about. But here's where it gets complicated, because while Caitlyn was soaring, other players were left wondering why the same spotlight never seemed to find them. And Juju Watkins was starting to notice a pattern. See, Juju never stopped working. Even with a torn ACL, she kept her name alive. Nike deals. Representation by Rich Paul's Clutch Sports. She showed up in commercials, did interviews, stayed connected with her fans. Her personality, cool, confident, unapologetically honest, made her a magnet. But behind that confidence, frustration was brewing. Because no matter how hard she worked, no matter how many endorsements she landed, the narrative was always the same. Caitlyn this, Caitlyn that. It wasn't Caitlyn's fault. But for someone like Juju, who knew her own talent was elite, it started to feel like an invisible ceiling. Like the game was rigged before the ball even tipped off. And then came the interview that changed everything. Sports Illustrated. Simple setup. Juju sitting down, calm and collected, talking about her journey back from injury. The conversation was going smoothly, respectful, professional, until they asked her which players she admired most in the game today. It should have been an easy layup, a chance to give props and move on. And at first, that's exactly what she did. She praised Aya Wilson's dominance, shouted out Chelsea Gray's leadership, and then she mentioned Caitlyn Clark, complimented her handles, acknowledged her clutch gene. All love, right? Wrong. Because in the middle of that praise, Juju said something else. Something that felt almost casual when it left her lips, but landed like a grenade in the room. She mentioned how some players seem to get calls that others don't. How certain stars are covered differently by the media, treated differently, celebrated differently. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't pointing fingers. But she didn't need to. Everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. And just like that, the internet lost its mind. Within minutes, and I mean minutes, the clips started spreading. But here's the thing about social media. It doesn't care about context. It doesn't care that Juju also praised Caitlyn. It doesn't care that her tone was reflective, not bitter. All it cared about was the drama, the headline, the controversy. And so the machine did what it does best. It twisted her words into a weapon. Suddenly, Juju wasn't the injured star speaking her truth. She was the jealous rival throwing a tantrum. The player who couldn't handle Caitlyn's success. The villain. Hashtags exploded across Twitter and TikTok. Team Caitlyn versus Stand with Juju. Comment sections turned into war zones. One side screaming that Juju was brave enough to call out the system. The other side accusing her of playing victim when she should have been focusing on her comeback. And the wildest part? Neither side was completely wrong, because the truth was buried somewhere in between all that noise. Juju wasn't jealous, but she also wasn't wrong. The system does favor certain players. The spotlight does shine brighter on some than others. And in a sport that's still fighting for equal recognition, that imbalance matters. But let's talk about what Juju was really saying. Because if you actually watched the full interview, and let's be honest, most people didn't, you'd see a young woman who was trying to start a conversation, not a war. She wasn't tearing Caitlyn down. She was asking a bigger question. Why does women's basketball still need to lean so heavily on one face? Why can't the shine be shared? Why does speaking up about inequality automatically make you the bad guy? These are the questions that make people uncomfortable, because answering them means admitting that maybe, just maybe, the system isn't as fair as we want to believe. And here's where it gets even messier. The Caitlyn Clark effect is real. She's brought more money, more eyeballs, more legitimacy to women's basketball than almost anyone in history. That's undeniable. But with that fame comes something else. Privilege. Not privilege she asked for, but privilege she benefits from. Certain calls go her way. Certain fouls get ignored. The media gives her grace they don't extend to others. And again, that's not her fault. But pretending it doesn't exist? That's where the problem starts. Because players like Juju see it. They feel it. And when they finally say something, they're told they're overreacting, that they're jealous, that they should just be grateful to be in the conversation at all. The backlash was instant and brutal. Reaction videos flooded YouTube with titles like Juju Watkins exposes herself and Caitlyn Clark's haters can't handle the truth. TikTok stitched her comments with highlight reels of Caitlyn draining logo threes, captioned with jealousy never wins. Even mainstream sports shows got in on it, framing the whole thing as another rivalry. The injured star versus the reigning queen. Never mind that Juju never said Caitlyn's name in a negative way. Never mind that her actual point was about systemic favoritism, not personal beef. The narrative was already set. And once the internet decides who the villain is, there's no going back. But then something unexpected happened. Sydney Colson, a veteran WNBA player who'd spent time with Caitlyn on the Indiana Fever, stepped into the conversation. And what she said completely shifted the tone. In a podcast appearance, Colson didn't defend Juju or attack Caitlyn. Instead, she humanized both of them. She talked about what it's really like to be in Caitlyn's shoes. The pressure, the scrutiny, the impossible standard of having to represent an entire sport on your shoulders. She described Caitlyn as funny, humble, and shockingly grounded despite everything. And in doing so, she reminded everyone that these aren't villains or heroes. They're just young women trying to survive in a system that chews people up and spits them out. Coulson's words did something the controversy couldn't. They created space for nuance. For the first time since the interview dropped, people started asking different questions. Maybe Juju's frustration and Caitlyn's privilege could both be true. Maybe this wasn't about who was right or wrong. Maybe it was about a sport that's finally big enough to have these hard conversations. And maybe, just maybe, that's progress. Meanwhile, Juju stayed silent. And honestly, that silence might have been her smartest move. Because while the internet raged, she was in the gym, grinding, rehabbing, getting stronger. Her team at Clutch Sports told her to let the noise fade, and she listened. She didn't clap back, didn't post receipts, didn't play the game everyone expected her to play. And slowly, something shifted. The same fans who'd called her bitter started rooting for her redemption. The narrative changed from jealous rival to resilient comeback kid. By refusing to engage, Juju took back control of her story. Now, as she prepares to step back onto the court, the stakes couldn't be higher. Every move will be analyzed. Every shot will be compared. One bad game, and the critics will say she couldn't handle the pressure. One great game, and they'll say she was proving the haters wrong. Either way, Juju knows the truth. This was never about Caitlyn. It was about a system that still has a long way to go. A system that celebrates one star while leaving others to fight for scraps. A system that punishes honesty and rewards playing it safe. But here's the thing. Both Juju and Caitlyn are changing the game. One by dominating the spotlight, the other by refusing to stay silent. Together, whether they realize it or not, they're forcing women's basketball into a new era. One where hard questions get asked. Where equality isn't just a buzzword. Where speaking your truth isn't seen as a tantrum, but as leadership. The controversy may fade. The hashtags will die down. But the conversation Juju started, that's not going anywhere. Because at the end of the day, this was never about two players. It was about a sport finally big enough to demand better. And whether you're Team Juju or Team Caitlyn, one thing's for sure. Women's basketball just got a whole lot more interesting.